Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this morning webinar. My name is Gøril Vollvegger, and I obviously work for Maze Feedback based in Norway. Usually when I'm doing my webinars, I do that by myself in a small meeting room in Stockholm. But this morning I am live in London, and I'm not by myself. I'm really proud to have two amazing retail stars from the UK joining me this morning. And I will introduce them to you in a very short time. Just a few practical information. The webinar will last for about 30 minutes. And if you have any questions you want to ask us, pops up during the talk and the discussions we have or at the end, feel free to write that in the chat, and we will try to do our best to get you a good answer at the end of the webinar. So with that, I am honored to introduce my two guests. We go first to the lady in the house.
Thank you.
Luci, Vardy, you are the Global Retail Director of the fashion brand Reiss. Tell me about yourself.
So, yeah, my name's Luci. Hi, nice to see you all. And I've been in retail now for almost 30 years, a difficult amount of years to put on that. Yeah. But actually, I've worked for Reiss now for 14 years. And as you said, I'm the Global Retail Director. That means that I'm responsible for all of the bricks and mortar across the global estate. That takes us from UK all through Europe and also to the US. There's around 200 points of sale and around 1,300 to 1,400 employees that kind of manage and lead that estate for us as a brand. So hugely passionate about the role that those teams play to deliver amazing service for our customers and some brilliant results that we've seen in the brand over recent years.
Thank you, Luci. And we will definitely talk more about your frontline staff during this webinar. Chris, you are, I think, a well-known man in the UK, being the, I think so, being the CEO of Retail Trust. But today we have not only listeners from Norway or the Nordic, not only listeners from the UK, but we have people joining us on the webinar that are from Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, even Greece and Ireland. And I don't think they know that much about Retail Trust. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, look, first of all, pleasure to be here, and thanks so much to the invitation to be here, but also Maze's ongoing support of the charity. So we're actually the oldest industry-funded charity in the UK, 193 years old. We were founded in 1832 with the express purpose of championing the notion that happy, healthy people created thriving economics, and that thriving industry creates a thriving British society. And we essentially deliver that purpose down three means. We help young kids who are trying to get into retail from disadvantaged backgrounds. We have a retirement business, so former retail workers fallen on hard times. We own about 500 properties up and down the country where we offer high quality social housing to former retail workers. And then in the middle is where we do the bulk of our work, where we look after the health and happiness through a range of services, around about 650,000 retail colleague every year.
And what you are doing aligns a lot with what Maze is doing. So we are proud of having been a partner for a year, and we will continue that partnership. So that's good. To both of you, I know both of you are really working on empowering and engaging the frontline team. What have you seen has changed the most the last years when it comes to, empowering, engaging, and motivating the frontline team? Luci?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I see that I've seen a lot of change actually post-COVID, and it's one of the only benefits that the world, I guess, saw coming out of COVID, which is a real focus to our employees' mental health, their work-life balance. And I think everybody, in the end, took some time through that period to spend time with their loved ones, able to kind of slow down a little. And then the world returned, and a lot of people outside of the retail sector were able to continue that work-life balance in terms of working from home, doing, their share of the childcare or looking after elderly parents. And for the retail teams, that was quite difficult because you're open 7 days a week, you have to be physically present. So I think there's been, certainly in Reiss, a real step change to think about how we can support those teams to ensure that they're getting as much support, with their work-life balance, with their mental well-being as people in other industries, because it is a relentless industry, a fun industry, but relentless nonetheless. So there's much, much more focus around supporting people with what works for them in terms of time, work-life balance, and also, I do have to, credit Chris and the work that Retail Trust do to really help people when they are going through tough times. There's such an enormous amount of support, and I think the awareness of the Retail Trust has just grown and grown in recent years, and I've never known as many people reaching out, and I think that's a fantastic thing. So I think we're creating a real safe space within retail to talk about what's important to you, to talk about potentially what's impacting you, and then it's our responsibility as retailers to help our employees find that right balance.
You're mentioning post-COVID and everything happened with that. Do you see also that the way of leading and managing your frontline teams also has changed with the new generation coming up? Like, there are younger people, they are more eager, they need to be seen, they need more feedback, they need more support. Have you seen a change with that new generation as well, Chris?
I definitely think there's a sense that younger workers want a different style of leadership. I think the amount of time that I've been within the sector, same about 30 odd years now, one of the things that has changed the most is the nature of leadership within retail, where it used to be very top down. Chief executive was in charge, and it was very directional, with very little voice or say from colleagues. I think a couple of things have happened. First of all, culturally, that's not the sort of businesses that people want to work in anymore. They want to feel empowered, they want to feel connected, they want a sense of purpose. And then I think the second thing is that retail businesses have got a lot more complex over the years. So the idea that one person can have the skills and the knowledge to make the vast array of decisions that a retail business now needs to make on a daily basis in the short term, but obviously in the longer term as well, has meant that decision making has had to be pushed down into organisations. We've had to empower colleagues to make decisions on their own. So I think there have been a number of factors that have changed the nature of leadership. In terms of the space of well-being and happiness of colleagues, as Luci said, I think there's a big shift coming out of COVID, where a number of social and economic and cultural factors have placed well-being and mental health right up the agenda of organisations. Firstly, I think, again, there's an expectation from colleagues that their businesses now look after themselves and play a role in their health. But the truth is, we've also in the UK got a failing NHS that simply cannot cope with the levels of poor mental health that the country suffers from now. And so actually industry has to take a role in that. It has to understand what its position and its value in trying to help solve some of the issues around mental health as well. And then I think also is that as organisations and as an industry, we are understanding the cost of poor mental health to business. It's in the billions. There was a report out this morning that said something around about 70% of all people on long-term sick, so that's people who are off over 4 weeks, is due to mental health. It's the number one issue, and that's costing industry and, of course, the country billions and billions of pounds every year. So there's a moral imperative to get this right, a cultural imperative to get it right in order to attract and retain talent, but there's very much clearly an economic imperative as well for businesses. And let's face it, retail hasn't got many places to go now in terms to take cost out of its organisations, and looking to reduce absence, looking to reduce churn because of health is one of the last places that I think that the sector hasn't really looked at strategically to understand how it can become more productive and more efficient in the face of the rising costs that we've seen of running these businesses. So it's quite a complex picture, but it has all come together to, I think, drive the issue of how do we look after our staff better? How do we make sure that they're happy and engaged? How do we care for them when they've got issues in order to see thriving individuals, thriving businesses, and as a consequence, hopefully a thriving society.
Yeah. I was reading, there was research that was done earlier this year, and that was done in UK, all the Nordic countries, and Germany. And that was done among quite a lot of frontline workers. and they found that 1 out of 3 frontline workers actually were considering leaving their job because they did not get any positive reinforcement, or they were not recognized for what they did. And that's a high number. I'm not good in math, but that's approximately 33% of your frontline staff. I don't know if it's yours, but based on this research, they say they're considering leaving. What do you do to try to stop that?
I mean, that doesn't surprise me at all. I think retail on the face of it can look like a very underwhelming career aspiration.
Yeah.
I totally disagree, because I think once you're in the heart of retail, actually, it's such a thriving industry. You meet such wonderful people, both, colleagues, networking, and then customers, actually. And I think we need to, inform people out there of how successful and how thriving a retail industry can be. However, it's very challenging. Like I said, it's a 7-day industry. You cannot work from home. You are dealing with some very challenging experiences with some of the general public. It has become much, much more complex, as Chris has said. It's not just about service and product now, it's about operations, efficiencies. Costs are rising, and that puts more pressure on the business, but also the teams. So it doesn't surprise me that 1 in 3 are choosing to leave. I think we have a duty, though, as kind of senior leaders within the industry, to not only highlight the benefits of the retail industry, because there are many, but also, everything we're talking about making sure that it doesn't feel untenable to work in retail, that you can still have a work-life balance, that if things do go wrong in the workplace, be that through, your own, situation, or because of members of the public, that there's support ready and willing and able to be given to them. And like I said, they're able to share their concerns. So it doesn't surprise me, but I do think it's manageable, and I think we can turn it back around, because actually a career in retail can still be one of the most exciting, fun, and a very successful career if you put your heart and soul into it. And it's, for me, you don't get quite that same camaraderie that I see in retail in any other industry. But it is our responsibility as the leaders to ensure that it isn't top down, it isn't the workforce taking all of the pressure, all of the strain, all of the workload. And there's lots of things that we can do about that. And it is about, feedback culture, positive as well as some of the opportunities that present. It's about the teams feeling that they can feedback also, two-way, which is quite different to how, it certainly was in my earlier days in retail. So I think it's good that we're talking about it, because we can hopefully turn the tide on those 1 in 3 looking to leave and minimise that.
You are both talking a lot about young people, the new generation, empowering the staff. You make them feel seen, appreciated, and motivated. And a year ago, you switched a little focus in your stores. You have been using Mystery Shopper and Google Review for some years. And 1 year ago, you started using Maze. And Maze is giving feedback, local feedback from local customers to your frontline staff every day, using, as things you've said, we're using notification, engagements, actionable insights, kudos to motivate and engage them. What made you change from solely Mystery Shopper and No One Then other reviews to daily customer feedbacks to your frontline staff, Luci?
Yeah, I mean, as you said, we switched to Maze just over a year ago now. Customers are at the heart of everything we do in Reiss. It should be in retail, but not always the case. But certainly in Reiss, we don't make any single decision without thinking about the impact of the customer. So when I started talking to Maze, it was probably the most excited I'd felt about getting genuine customer feedback to any of the other platforms that I'd spoken to. And the simple reason being, it is real customers, it's authentic, and also that the feedback can be seen and can be shared by colleagues across the business, from a part-time sales associate all the way up to myself, my central operations team, the senior retail leadership team. And our team members are motivated by doing a great job. And I think the authenticity, that it's a true customer coming in and highlighting that Adam in Vigo Street has given exceptional service. I want Adam to know that, and I want Adam's peers to know that. And that's what we get through the Maze app. It is instantaneous, very real feedback. It mentions, our team members by name. We're able to then personally reward and recognise and call out this great service. And then also our team members, because they do care so much about service and our customer experience, they also do want to hear when we haven't done something quite as well as we could. And it has really highlighted for us, Maze has really highlighted for us that we do a good job with service. We do a great job with service. And I think we all knew that, but it's really highlighted one specific area of opportunity where we're doing an okay job, but there's a real opportunity to do a much, much better job. So it's enabled us to work on some training materials, some workshops with our teams to really improve that part of the experience for the customer. And because our team members know it's come from the customer and not from head office and not from me and not from mystery shopping, it's genuine customers asking for an advanced service. They're much, much more willing to embrace it. I think it's been the single biggest factor in driving our improvement in conversion, which is obviously our biggest metric in retail. How many customers are you converting when they walk into the store? And you can see a definite relation to the Maze feedback and the consistency of that strength of feedback to those stores that have joined our 1% club, which is where they've driven their conversion by 1% in the last 12 months. So it's been very successful for us.
That's amazing. I'm very happy to hear this. Yes. But when we talk about this, I've tried to talk, or I'm talking to retailers all over Scandinavia and Europe, and I'm trying to challenge them into focusing a little bit more on the KBI, like the behavior, instead of the results, because the results is a results of the behavior in the store. What Luci is saying now, she says that daily feedback engage and motivate them and empowers them to do what matters the most. How does this align with what you focus on? Does it sound good?
If you measure, happiness is so clearly linked to whether somebody wants to stay in their roles, wants to be stay in their businesses. We know it's a key driver of retention, and a huge part of someone's happiness is whether they feel recognised by the business, whether they feel engaged, whether they feel heard. So certainly the work that we're doing to promote happiness within the industry and champion the notion that it's a key input of financial results is hugely aligned to the work that Maze are doing around ensuring that the right feedback gets into the hands of the right people and connects colleagues back into the organisation as well. And I think just looks at returning some of the joy that I know, fell in love with, with the sector, 3 decades ago when we both first joined. I'm sure, shopping is the UK's #1 pastime.
It is, huh?
We're called a nation of shopkeepers, and I think that more needs to be done to promote the idea that this is a joyful experience for shopper, for colleague, to return some of the happiness to our high streets up and down the country. And in so doing, though, I think reminds government policymakers, the public at large, of the huge social and economic role that retail plays in this country. It's the largest employer of young people. It's the largest employer of women. Our high streets bind our communities together. It's such an important glue to our social fabric. And I think anything that is highlighting the joy and the happiness of a great experience within store is a really important ingredient in that work.
I was talking with you before we went on live, and you told me that especially UK has a lot of challenges in frontline staff being abused and they don't feel safe, and that's why, of course, your company comes in, or Retail Trust. Why do you think it is like this, especially here? And also, do you see this in other countries as well? Because obviously in Norway, I don't think this is such a big problem now. But what do you have to do to prevent to come where you are in the UK today with this threat among frontline staff?
I mean, it's a huge and incredibly complex topic. You're quite right. It's probably the single largest shift in reasons that we're dealing with people calling our helpline or reaching out for help across our digital services has been this rise in abuse and intolerance directed towards anyone on the front line, actually, not just store workers but delivery drivers, the colleagues that are manning the phones in our customer service centres up and down the country as well. A lot of it obviously is linked to the rise in shoplifting. About 60% of all cases of abuse abuse that we are dealing with is in some way linked to rise in shoplifting, and there's trying to unpick the social drivers of that, very difficult, but clearly it's not a topic that the government have put at the front and centre for many years. It's not been a priority for the police, and we've got issues of prosecuting perpetrators as well because of the backlog in our courts as well. But I think, to some degree, I think the industry has been caught sleeping a little bit as well.
Okay.
I don't think it's had the right policies in place. I don't think it's had the right training in place. Too often, I think that it's been seen as part and parcel of the job as opposed to something that the industry simply won't tolerate. But I think we're starting to see that change. The narrative around at a government level seems to be changing. The narrative around the police force as well seems to be changing. And certainly the industry is leaping on this issue now. Rises in use of body cams. We run a campaign, or running a campaign called Let's Respect Retail, which launches for its third year in November. And the sector is rallying around that, and it's helping us provide free training into the industry to make sure colleagues have got the right skills to de-escalate situations as well as deal with the abuse, but also actually drive a consumer campaign around the country to educate shoppers on the impact of not treating our store staff as human beings and seeing them as an easy target to lose their temper with and shout at and get their way in stores. So I don't think there's a single silver bullet to solving.
That would have been too easy, wouldn't it?
Solving all this.
And I also think it's, sadly, it's not new news. This isn't a new thing. The time that I spent in stores, it was quite common practice 25 years ago. I think the difference now, thankfully, a bit to our earlier conversation about employees' mental health, work-life balance, it's having its profile raised in terms of we have to do something about it. Because being honest with you, 25 years ago, 20 years ago, it was just accepted as part and parcel. You work on the front line, you're part of industry, you get attacked, abused, shouted at, and nobody took it seriously, actually, from, leadership, business, didn't have elements like the retail trust. Certainly the government, was nowhere near in terms of putting this as a priority. So it's definitely not new news. I think the positive, if you can take a positive from such a difficult situation, is that all of these topics are now being talked about. We're here today talking about it. And that can only be a good thing because we will start to get momentum.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's one of the challenges definitely of the industry that we work in.
Obviously, with you leading, how many employees do you say you had?
1,300.
1,300, right. And if you know behind the figure that 1 of 3 is considering quitting, not with Reese, of course, because they are motivated and engaged and empowered. But would you say that that daily feedback from both customers, but also from the management, being seen by the customers, by their employees, do you think that will contribute to reducing these numbers?
I really hope so. And actually, if I do talk about Reese, and listen, we've still got lots and lots of work to do because we're all learning about how to manage, situations differently. How do you navigate, better well-being, work-life balance whilst running a 7-day business? So I'm not saying that we're done by any means, but actually we have seen our retail retention improve. So we are going against the grain in Reese in terms of, more of our colleagues staying with us quite significantly, actually. And I really do hope that's down to a very authentic approach, actually, from our business, our culture, our leaders, in terms of having that honest feedback 2 ways. We regularly ask our colleagues around how they're feeling, what we can do to improve conditions for them. And it's not always about pay and benefits. It is about their work-life balance. It is about the support they receive. It is about that recognition, written recognition, verbal recognition, store visits, colleague recognition. So I think you can combat the 1 in 3 reduction by being more human, actually. And I think that's, you said, Chris, about the public treating our teams like human beings. It's really important that we treat our employees like human beings as well. And I don't think that's always been the case. So actually, it is around not just what we all do in our jobs, it's how we do it, the behaviours, the language, how open we are, how seen we are. I love to be visible in the stores. I like everybody to know, who I am, that they can talk to me. And that hopefully is going some way to creating that more, authentic culture, I guess, where people do feel seen and they feel like they can speak and be heard, and that when something can be changed, we do. So yeah, I think there are things that you can do for sure.
There are things you can do. Do you really think that behavioral data, it could be, of course, feedback from customers or from anyone, do you really think that could change or create a better performance, like results in the store? Will it help?
I think it has to help because actually, and again, Chris said it earlier, happy employees deliver better results.
They do.
Because they just do. It's self-fulfilling. When you go to work and you feel great and you feel appreciated and you feel supported, you give your best. You feel seen and you get recognised. When you get recognised for that, additionally, you want to come back the next day and do it again and do even more. So hearing that you're doing a great job from your customers, you hear you're doing a great job from your colleagues and your peers, and you hear you're doing a great job in newsletters and in calls and in visits. Absolutely, that's going to drive improved results because they want to get it again. It's quite addictive being called out and being praised for the job that you're doing. Clearly, there's financial rewards, through selling and improving our sales as well. So that's a part of it. But yeah, I have absolutely no doubt a happier, more engaged, more informed employee will always deliver better results.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest shifts between 2020 and now has been this move to place happiness, health, well-being, colleague engagement at the heart, strategically at the heart of business, as opposed to doing a lot of things tactically, which is what we saw around COVID, is that people just threw things at the wall and saw what stuck. But at the heart of moving from something tactical to strategic is that you've got to measure it, and you can't move something you don't measure.
No.
So unless we've got access to data around this and start to set some foundational benchmarks, anecdotally, I don't think there's anyone who wouldn't accept that happier colleagues are A, less likely to be off work or leave businesses, and secondly, are likely to work harder and be more productive and drive better results. So anecdotally, we all know that, but in order to improve that, we've got to find a way of measuring that and data. So we have to use data because otherwise we won't see the changes that we want.
And we see a shift when we talk to retailers that they have always been measuring KPIs, basket size, conversion you mentioned, right? But what we have seen that when you start measure the behavior of the frontline staff and they actually see the impact they have, they start doing more of what matters the most in the meeting with the customers. Sure. I was talking to a fashion retailer in the Nordic last week who just started, and he saw that when his frontline staff were helping the customers in the fitting room, that increased the basket size with 28%. Can you imagine?
It doesn't
so I think
me.
Right. So when you get this feedback and frontline staff know that my contribution actually matters when it comes to both happy customers, happy boss, and revenue.
I remember it myself though. I remember that's what got me hooked into retail because it's so self-fulfilling when you help somebody else, where you make somebody, especially within the fashion industry, because people physically feel better, when they look great, they feel great. Right. So if you've contributed to that, it makes you feel good as well. And I think that's what we need to spread, is that actually, giving them a great working environment to enable them to flourish and do the things that they love the best, which is to help our customers, not only benefits the commercials, which obviously is what the business is there for, but it improves their sort of self-worth. Hopefully then they get some financial incentives as well, but absolutely it is that kind of self-fulfilled happiness when you do a great job and you help somebody.
I mean, we've been championing the notion that happiness creates thriving economics for almost 200 years. I kind of feel like my job will be done when on a Monday, the executive are poring over the data around staff retention, absence and happiness in the same way that they're looking at the sales data in the trading meetings. And when we understand that data is just as important to whether you've got a thriving business, then I'll
Then you retire.
Step back. I can retire.
After the 30 years.
Absolutely, absolutely.
After you retire after 200 years.
Yes.
That's good. Okay, everyone, the time is running, and what I would like to do is before we look into the questions in the chat from the frontline staff, I'll give you 20 seconds. One good advice for the retailers listening in now. What would that be from you, Chris?
One silver bullet.
Yeah.
For me, if there was one thing to say that you should do, is invest in the soft skills around your junior leadership. I think all the data that we see shows that the relationship at that level is the single biggest driver of happiness at work. And as a sector, I think we've underinvested in soft skills development of junior line managers. That first-time line managers, they tend to manage 90% of the workforce within retail in many of the big organisations, and just upskilling them in mental health leadership and general soft skills. I think we'd see a big improvement in the levels of happiness across the industry.
That was a little bit more than 20 seconds, but it was worth it. Okay, what is your bullet point?
So I think it's as simple as think about the humans at the heart of your business, and that is the frontline staff, and think about the ways that you can overcome some of the challenges of it being a 7-day business. Don't think about why you can't let them do the school run. Think about how you can allow them to do the school run, or look after, a parent, or do something else that's really important to them in their personal life. And this isn't about, giving employees everything and impacting your business. But if you can find ways that both parties are getting what they need, both the employee and the business, that's when you're going to create a magical scenario where everybody's, firing on all cylinders, the business and the employee. And I think too often in retail, I see junior managers or first-time managers putting roadblocks in the way of why something can't be done for an employee. Yeah. I think flip it on its head, find a way to do something for that employee, because you will get it back tenfold in terms of their loyalty, commitment, and the work that they do when they're in their working hours. So I think just remember we're all human, and just because you're a manager or a leader doesn't mean that anybody else is less human than you. Do what you can to make their lives enjoyable.
Perfect. So let's see if there are any questions here. We have here one. Do you notice any difference between the generation Gen Z, millennials, etc., in terms of the level of engagement, needs, and the expectations they place on their employees? Who wants to answer?
Huge. Yeah. So, we're moving into an era where leaders of retail businesses are going to be managing workforces made up of 4 generations, and they have very different views culturally, their expectations of business, and importantly, their levels of resilience. I was at an event last month with some of the working party that are trying to shape potential proposals for the government, and it said 16 to 24-year-olds in the UK at the moment, 49% of them are already saying that they expect that their mental health will deteriorate to a point over the next 12 months that they'll need time off work, and 49% also report that their work has affected their health in the last 12 months, and that is a huge difference in outlook to, for example, our generation. And so it's going to get increasingly complex, creating a culture that can balance the needs, the outlooks, and the views of those of that workforce, and need a response that is going to need to be quite targeted and individual, and recognise the workforce as individuals as opposed to a homogeneous mass, just putting a load of tick boxes with regards to how you look after them. But increasingly complex.
I agree, and I think that goes back to that human. Treat that human as they need to be treated. You cannot now ring fence every employee and treat them the same. You do need to, because we have, to your point, 4 generations. The slightly older generation will want to be managed slightly differently than the younger generation, but then you have also the managers having to manage the younger generation differently. So it's very complex, and I think the best way to address this is just to treat everybody as an individual, and communication is so key. Find what makes that person tick, because it's going to be different. It's always been different, but it's more different than it's ever been. For somebody it might be time, for somebody else it might be finances, for somebody else it might be mental health support. And I think that's where communication is so key at every level, to really find out what it is that our team members, whatever generation they are, what is it that's going to make life better for them, and that only comes with communication and authentic communication, really listening to what they need.
So what you're saying, actually, you need more time to actually be a leader. right? Because it's challenging to listen to everyone, to see everyone. It means that the leaders need to have more time to actually be a leader for these people.
I don't know if it's more time. I think it's a shift in time. It's a shift to stand back and just observe, talk, listen, rather than being so task-focused.
Right.
Because if you do that, you'll get more done anyway, because you'll have a workforce that's more engaged, you know, that's going to deliver more. So I think it's stepping away from the crazy 24/7 rat race of what retail can have been before, and just calm it down and think about the people at the heart of it, and what can we do to slightly mould our ways of working to benefit them. And so no, I don't think it's more time. I think it's a shift in approach.
Yeah, good. I like that. Okay, so they say that in good company, time is flying. I was afraid we would not have enough things to talk about during this webinar. Obviously,
you've met us before. You know that was not going to be the case.
So this was from London. Thank you everyone for listening in. And if you see at the bottom of the screen, you can subscribe to the Retail Maze Insights and newsletter. And I'm sure there will be some nice insight from this webinar as well there. So thank you everyone for listening in. Thank you, Chris and Lucy. It was amazing having you here. And I have some Norwegian chocolate for you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so thank you everyone, and have a nice day.
Thank you.